The Denver Broncos are on a race to improve and correct the issues that plagued them late against the Indianapolis Colts. We'll talk about that and more from the South Stands on today's episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Denver Broncos are back at the team facility on Monday to get the nasty taste of Sunday's loss out of their mouths. And there is a race to improve here, as Sean Payton told us in his Monday conference call. Welcome into another episode of Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you know it's your team every day. Thanks to all the everydayers out there in Broncos country. Thanks for making us your first listen, however you choose to do so. And if you're not yet an everydayer, become one. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports. And on today's episode of the show, a bonus episode for everyone in Broncos country. We're going to go through Aftermath Monday here following the Broncos' loss to the Colts on Sunday. We'll go through why the Broncos are in a race to improve, but it starts with the defensive side of the ball after they allowed a massive output to Daniel Jones and the Colts. Plus, can Sean Payton's young team figure out how to bounce back after a gut-wrenching performance on Sunday? We'll go through all of that here on today's episode of the show. Let's dive deep into it here. Let's open things up here. Broncos head coach Sean Payton had a conference call on Monday. We always call it Aftermath Monday, following any time that the Broncos play. Win, loss, you name it. We hear from Sean. We hear from a handful of players here. Ultimately, when we look back at Sunday's game, the Broncos defense was definitely the sore subject of the entire game. I think even in the aftermath, the post 24-hour rule, you look back and there are a lot of concerns about how the defense played, giving up over 470 yards to Daniel Jones and that Indianapolis Colts offense. I came away after doing an all-22 film breakdown on Mile High Sports. I came away with the impression this Colts team is a lot better than people are giving them credit for or thought that they were going to be before the season. Their offensive line seems to be clicking on all cylinders right now, and Daniel Jones has playmakers around him where he was getting the ball out of his hands quickly. We got a chance to catch up with Broncos defensive end and obviously Zach Allen, one of the guys who's just such an impact player here on the defense. We caught up with him in terms of the pass rush, in terms of them not being able to get after Daniel Jones as much on Sunday. Only one sack by the Broncos defense. Is Zach Allen worried at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you watch the film, a lot of block-up shots, which, teams are probably not going to just let us, just rush forward and they're only going to protect us with 5. Not a lot of teams are going to do that. And, they, ball was out quick. I made hill throws. And, I'm not worried about the pass rush. I think, obviously week 1 was special with 6 sacks, but, I would love for it to be like that every week, but that's just not the case. But I think when you watch the film, there are some guys are still rushing well. It's just, ball out quick, stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that go into sacks, and we'll be fine. I'm not worried about this group.
And yeah, I'm not necessarily worried about the pass rush either. And I think Zach makes a lot of great points right there. I still, once again, got to go back to giving credit to the Indianapolis Colts offensive line, what they were able to do. Let's go into some next-gen stats from Sunday's game here that really kind of paint the picture about Daniel Jones, his efficiency, and more importantly, the Broncos trying to get pressure on him here. According to NFL next-gen stats, Daniel Jones was blitzed on a career-high 71.1% of his dropbacks on Sunday and completed 16 of his 25 attempts while facing 5 or more pass rushers for 265 yards and a touchdown, which was the 4th most passing yards against the blitz in any game in the NFL Next Gen Stats era since 2016. Jones attempted 10 passes into tight windows, completing 6 of them for 100 yards. So he was blitzed on 71.1% of his dropbacks. The Broncos really wanted to try to get after Daniel Jones. As we mentioned in our keys to victory coming into the game last week, you have to find a way to get after him. Denver was not able to do that because of how quickly he was able to get the ball out of his hands, and he was accurate. He knew exactly where he was going. That's frustrating right there. But also this statistic from NFL Next Gen Stats is also mind-boggling as well, because the Broncos, they deployed man blitzes, so they played man coverage while sending a blitz on 52.6% of their pass snaps in coverage on Sunday, the second highest rate by any team since the start of last season, and they allowed the most passing yards against man blitz, 206 yards specifically on Sunday, of any team since at least 2016. So for Vance Joseph, a high variation of we want to send pressure and we're going to play man-to-man coverage. Well, when pressure's not getting home, that makes it so tough on your cornerbacks. It makes it tough on everybody else. And the Colts were so effective against it. This is going to be something that Justin Herbert and the Chargers look to capitalize on as well. Let's also take a look at it right here. The Broncos have utilized the highest man blitz rate, 24.7%, since 2024 began, but they generated the 9th lowest pressure rate, 39.4%, and allowed the 3rd highest completion percentage of 64.3% on a minimum of 5 plays on such plays in that time frame. So what we've seen, and I think this goes back to last year and the big explosive plays given up, the Broncos playing man coverage, sending pressure, it's not getting home in time, and teams are trying to protect against that by getting the ball out quickly. That is problematic. And more importantly, it was problematic for what had happened in terms of first down efficiency by the Colts, where the Broncos defense allowed 9.8 yards per play on first down. That really handcuffs you defensively from a personnel standpoint. And that's not a trend that you want to continue. And that's why I think there's this race, there's this urgency here to improve. And that's something that Sean Payton got into. But let's also talk about this as well. Zach Allen, a leader of this team, talked about how the team and how he as a veteran can help the team bounce back after a tough loss like Sunday's.
Yeah, no, I mean, we got a good group. I mean, last year, we had a couple tough losses that you saw. We bounced back and won those games after. So it's a mature group. And, yeah, guys handled it the right way today. So we're on to the Chargers now. And, we've, saw the mistakes and corrected them. And, hopefully we don't make them again.
And I've made note of this too. I see this team. I see that they have this professional demeanor about them. Guys are very much all about improving, and that's what you want. There are some locker rooms where guys take film rooms, or like the day after a game when you're in film and you're going through everything that went right and went wrong. When guys make a mistake, they get defensive about it. I don't think that there are many guys like that inside this Broncos locker room, and that's a good sign here. And so hopefully you can carry over these improvements against the Chargers, which Zach Allen also talked with us about, just the respect that the team has for them. And they're excited for a matchup against their divisional rival here this Sunday.
Yeah, no, we, like I said, we watched the film earlier. We'll get those corrections made. Just, follow our assignments, follow our reads, and then, watch Chargers game tonight and, really start game planning Wednesday for it. So, we know, the kind of challenges they bring. They're a hell of a team. We saw it last year. They started off really hot this year. So it's going to be a challenge, and we got a lot of respect for them. So, but we're excited for the challenge.
Justin Herbert and that Chargers team are going to be a tough matchup here for this Broncos team going into next week. And look, there is a sense of urgency, as I would say here early on in the season, as Sean Payton will tell you here in a little bit later, a race to improve early on, especially with these conference matchups and division matchups on the road. You have to come up big here when it matters most, and that's going to be a big test here for the Broncos on Sunday. But Broncos Country coming up next, we're going to hear from Broncos head coach Sean Payton, who talked about the team's need to be able to bounce back from a tough loss like this against the Indianapolis Colts. You'll hear that, and you'll hear Sean Payton's thoughts on how the Broncos struggled on defense here on today's episode of the show. Today's Locked On Broncos podcast is brought to our friends over there at Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. And with football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. I love checking in on simple projections like Josh Allen for more or less than 270 passing yards, or Saquon Barkley for more or less than 1 rushing touchdown. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDON NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDON NFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We all turn to some funny places for advice. Your barista, your favorite podcast, your barber, maybe even a random stranger in the hallway. But not everyone is the right one when it comes to real support. That's why BetterHelp is here. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 10 years of experience, BetterHelp helps you find your right match, someone clinically trained and credentialed to guide you through life's challenges, because life It doesn't come with a playbook. I've utilized BetterHelp therapy in the past before. The thing I liked about it, I signed up. I was matched with a licensed clinician within minutes, and I vibed well with my therapist. But if you don't vibe well with yours, you can change therapists at any time at no additional cost. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Find the one with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over there at Upside. Hey, Broncos Country, are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind today. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes. You should too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now by using my limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN for a limited time 25-cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code TOUCHDOWN. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. This Broncos team needs to find a way to bounce back and bounce back quickly against the Los Angeles Chargers in week 3. But before you can get to week 3, you have to go through and you have to find ways to improve. And certainly the Broncos defense is one of those areas, as we highlighted on early on in the show, some of the staggering numbers that Daniel Jones had against this defense, despite the pressure rate. But more importantly, the biggest thing that stood out to Sean Payton was how the Broncos defense played on first down, allowing 9.8 yards per play. And on top of that, allowing teams to score for 2 weeks in a row in their opening possession. Sean Payton expressed his concern.
Well, look, they averaged 9.8 yards on first down. They obviously came out throwing to run. We busted some fire zone coverages. Late in the game, we did a better job of peeling on the running back in certain looks. But early in the game, we've got the runner coming out of the backfield uncovered. It's the second week in a row that we've allowed points on the first drive of a game. That's concerning.
And this is something that's going to have to get fixed because, as I mentioned earlier, what we learned from Next Gen Stats, if you're going to pressure and send guys on a blitz to try to get after quarterbacks, if that's not happening, you have to adjust your game plan. And so I think that conversation will obviously happen between he and Vance Joseph, the defensive staffs. I think position-specific guys as well, including inside linebacker. That is an area that got attacked a little bit here in Sunday's game. So a lot to improve on. But I think those numbers on first down, 9.8 yards per play, that's almost like expecting that you're never going to get a stop. I mean, that right there is ridiculous efficiency. And that's something I think the Broncos offensively should strive for. The Broncos offense was not the issue really in this game. Yes, they had some mistakes. They had some issues of their own, but they did everything that they can to make sure that the team should have been in position to win this game. 28 points scored on the road, efficiency all across the board. The defense suffered a massive letdown here in this game on Sunday, and that's one thing that Sean talked about. But when you have a letdown and you have a type of game like this where everything kind of goes against you late, you have all these mistakes that set you back, and then you lose on a heartbreaker that was a last-second field goal. The Broncos have been in this position before. Last year against the Kansas City Chiefs, has Sean in his experience of being a coach, and obviously a tenured coach at that, how can he use his experience to help this young team that he still has, still young folks, despite the strides that they make? How can he teach them and how can he utilize his experiences to help these guys bounce back?
So many of them happen in our league because the games are so close. They're often 1 and 2 minute drills. And so I think of that coming in the morning. I'll think of that Tuesday before Wednesday's team meeting. How to shed one that doesn't affect another. But I think Bo's correct. I mean, it's a long season. And today's the day though that, man, we really got to not miss out on the opportunity to correct and not miss out on the opportunity to recognize maybe why. And then later in the week, the to refocus on an important division game.
You have to find a way to correct these issues, and you can't let them build up from turning into one game to the next. And I think that's a great point there, especially what Bo Nix said in his press conference on Sunday is you can't let one loss turn into two, because the schedule gets definitively tougher here for the Broncos going down the stretch here, because even though that Joe Burrow is going to be out quite some time here, the Bengals are still going to be a dangerous team. Jake Browning's been in that system for quite some time. You don't want to look too far ahead to Monday Night Football. You know how tough of a team the Los Angeles Chargers are, and you have to get that nasty taste out of your mouth on the road against them, a team that swept the Broncos last season. So the stakes are higher, and then it just gets tougher there. The Philadelphia Eagles, and you got to go to London, and you got to come back and face two teams that just had one of the highest scoring shootouts we've seen in recent memory in the NFL between the Giants and the Cowboys. So the Broncos had to find a way to stop the bleeding here early on and not let this grow into something that could clot up for them and cause issues down the road. Broncos Country, that'll wrap up today's bonus episode of the show here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you know it's your team every day. We appreciate you so much for tuning in. If you love the show, if you're a brand new viewer or listener, do us a favor, Broncos Country, hit that subscribe button. Share this podcast with someone that you know who's a Broncos fan that may not know about us. Help us continue to grow this awesome community that we have. Tomorrow's episode is going to be a little bit more mailbag-centric. Sayre Bedinger and myself, we're going to sit down. We're going to talk a lot about where is Evan Ingram. Sean Payton brought him in to be the Joker, but why isn't Sean using it? We'll discuss all that and more on tomorrow's episode, Locked On Broncos.